Hello again. I was interested in one of the comments made on the video I posted here yesterday about Lenny Henry being cast as a hobbit in Amazon's new Lord of the Rings series. Somebody said that it was clear that I hated black people. Responding to the comment, somebody else said that I probably didn't hate black people, but only disliked them. This is all so weird that I felt it would be worthwhile looking at the false reasoning which must have driven people to such a conclusion. I always try to start a dialogue with people who make odd claims of this sort, but without any success, which is why I thought I would devote an entire video to this subject. To begin with, I will freely admit that I hate the idea of free and unrestricted immigration to Britain. I believe it to be a very bad idea, which has caused immeasurable harm to the country. Anybody with a grain of common sense, though, would see that it does not follow on inexorably from this, that I hate immigrants themselves. My next door neighbour is Bulgarian. A couple of doors along is a Sileti family. Now, I don't tend to have many dealings with my neighbours of any ethnicity. I'm a private person. I tend to keep myself to myself. But of course, if any of them knock on my door and ask for help, I will oblige. For example, the Bulgarian had trouble starting his car recently, and I helped him and his brother push it until the engine started. Well, does anybody seriously imagine that I would be less willing to offer a bit of help like that to a foreigner than I would to an English person? I've had no dealings at all with the Sileti family, who tend to keep themselves to themselves and only seem to associate with others of the same ethnicity who arrive by car. But does that mean that I wouldn't provide any help if asked to by the family? What do viewers think I would do if one of this family knocked on my door? Refuse to open the door and shout through the letterbox, "Go away, no coloureds wanted here"? Well, of course, these people are not of African ancestry. Perhaps I would adopt a harsher and more ruthless policy were I to end up with black neighbours. Let's stop just for a moment and consider this idea. I have suggested several possibilities regarding people whose ancestry is predominantly from sub-Saharan Africa. For instance, I have said that some research indicates that there is variation in IQ across different human populations in the world, with those from East Asia at the top, Europeans in the middle, and people from sub-Saharan Africa at the bottom. Now, there's a huge amount of controversy about this, and it may very well prove not to be the case. But just for a moment, let us assume that it is, and ask ourselves what the consequences would be, and how it would affect me or make me feel. Among my relatives, friends and neighbours, there is a wide spread of IQs, most probably being about average, some a little below average, and others higher than average. Firstly, of course, I do not spend my life trying to calculate the IQs of my family, let alone the people living next door or those who I might encounter in the local supermarket. That really would be a bit odd. But suppose I was informed and knew for certain that one of my nephews, or the man living next door, was 10 points below me on the IQ scale. Does anybody really think that this would cause me to hate him? That would be quite mad, as I'm sure people can see when I put it in this way. Why should I hate people because they are less intelligent than me? I might perhaps have a feeling that if too large a proportion of the population of some area had IQs which were below average, that this might affect the prosperity of that district and perhaps even sharpen crime rates and so on. But even so, I would not hate the people living there. That's utterly senseless. As it happens, I do not approve of large-scale immigration into this country from any ethnic group, whether Europeans, who are the same ethnicity as I am, or Africans, Indians or Chinese, who belong to different ethnic groups to me. I want Britain to retain its own peculiar identity and culture. I would rather see English, Scottish or Welsh people around me than I would Lithuanians, Nigerians or Bengalis. I prefer to mix with people with whom I share a heritage, in other words. But the idea that I would hate such people from other ethnicities or wish them harm is really grotesque, and it says, I think, more about those who level such an accusation than it does about me. I have never said that I hate anybody, because I don't hate anybody in the world. And I think that those who talk of hatred in the comments here are finding this idea elsewhere and then attributing it to me. I rather think that the problem is that the word hate has become such a common one in the last few years. There was a time when one hardly ever heard talk of hate or hatred, but with the introduction of various laws about inciting race hatred, hate speech and so on, it's hard to open the newspaper these days without stumbling across the word. The implication of these new laws is that hatred is everywhere and must be stamped out at all costs. It's not true, of course. Few people really hate anybody at all. I certainly don't hate anyone. The result is that when left-wing characters hear somebody saying something with which they disagree, they automatically assume that the unwelcome words must be motivated by hatred, and that what is being said on any topic from homosexuality to immigration must surely constitute hate speech. This is a strange and distorted perspective, and I think it's at the root of a lot of the problem here. I think that people a lot of people, not all obviously, I think that a large number of people, particularly progressive and left-wing types, are unable to distinguish between people who are opposed to or dislike a political idea or a doctrine and those who hate individuals. I think most rational people can distinguish the difference between those two things. I think that left-wing people have a problem with it.